Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, Mateo has a few words for you.
He doesn't want to deliver the words, but he must have them in his little heart. Okay, nobody can hear you, man.
Do you
what
have
do you think?
the words in your heart?
He appears to be at a loss for words, actually.
I
didn't hear any sound come out there. I saw your mouth open, but I did not hear any sound.
I don't know that he's actually a dog. I think he's like a tiny kangaroo.
Yeah, he looks like a little marsupial or something. Just start the episode?
You just want to get started?
Okay.
Right,
I guess we're just going to get right into it.
What a strange guy.
All right, we're going to let Mateo narrate the whole thing this week.
Mateo, take it away.
Ride across this country into the starlight. 12,000 miles, turn back, do it again. No destination, it's just a journey. You were my lover and friend.
This is episode 6. We are finally doing the install of our door and windows. We are also doing a water test of all the things we recently installed on the outside of the vehicle, just trying to make sure that we don't have any leaks. And we are also installing the plywood walls that we painted with Kills last week. As you've seen in the last few episodes, we have been preparing for this final door and window install. You saw it when we welded in the framing reinforcements. We had all the sections laid out, and then we also eventually cut all of the holes for each of these things, but we didn't do the final install because we still had a lot to get in place and a few decisions to make with our walls. But this week, we were finally ready.
We decided to go with 3 windows on this build, 2 of which are located above the kitchen side, and those are emergency windows that swing out. And they're each smaller, but they let a lot of light in and give you a nice view. And on the opposite side, above the couch, we went with 1 really large window. That one slides open and has a screen, but we decided to just do 1 big window, kind of most the length of the couch, so you have really nice views and a lot of light coming in. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what windows did we go with? After we got that amazing Tern Overland door, we got Rec Pro windows. And, well, you want to tell them the conclusion on these Rec Pro windows?
I mean, RV style windows in general. I don't know who designed this kind of sandwich style where you put 1 frame on the inside, the window on the outside through the hole, and you screw the internal frame in and it kind of sandwiches itself on the wall.
Yeah, don't recommend them. That being said, we're making them work and we are going to fix the things that are wrong with them, but you shouldn't have to fix things new out of the box, right? And as far as the design goes, I don't think it's inherently bad. I think they just go real cheap on it. Can we make like oversized plates that hang over, give you a little more margin for error? Maybe either machine screw slots or something more sturdy than like a threaded thing grabbing a thin piece of aluminum. Like, it could be done a lot better.
Tern Overland has done it so much better. They design beautiful windows, but unfortunately those weren't in our budget this time around. It takes a lot of effort to get these windows to a place where they're functioning, and it's the same style of windows that all of our shuttle buses use, and I assume most shuttle buses use. They can work and we're making them work, but they do take a little bit of extra time and effort. If we had the budget, we would definitely be going with those Tern Overland windows, so maybe in the future.
That being said, we do really like the choice of the size and shape of the windows and the look it's giving the vehicle. Like, we're very excited about that. So overall, we're really excited. Just the product kind of left something to be desired.
As you probably know, we've converted 2 shuttle buses in the past, and those buses use the same style of windows that we bought for this Unicell. Our bus is a 2007, and we pulled all the windows out of that bus. So we saw how these foam gaskets that come stock on the windows perform over time. Not well. They do not hold up. We don't like them when we reseal the windows on our buses. We always take the window out, take the foam gasket out, and then replace it with butyl tape. So we do not trust these RV windows, and we decided to just preemptively go ahead, pull that foam gasket off, and replace it with butyl tape right out of the gate. because we don't want to have to do that again down the line if the window starts leaking. We want to just try to get it in as good of a place as it can be on the first install. So that was the first thing we did. We took the windows out and removed the foam all the way around the window. Then I took a little bit of sandpaper just to scuff up the edges, wiped it clean, and put the butyl tape all around the edges. Now, I did order black butyl tape and they sent us gray. So not a huge deal because we do caulk the outside in the end, but why? I don't understand.
Can't help feeling like time is passing through you. Do you feel like life is?
Once the butyl tape was all around the edges of the window, I also took a little bit of sandpaper and just scuffed around the outside of the window where the tape is gonna set into, because the outside of that Unicell is really smooth. Once we did all of that, we pressed the window in place. This is the moment of truth. You wanna make sure that it's completely lined up and in place because it's kind of hard to get it off after that butyl tape is pressed in.
Yeah, it's stressful because, like, once again, there's such a small margin of error of what the hole needs to be cut to that it can be almost tough to get the thing in place. And once the tape is on there, you want to try to get it in smooth without, like, kind of having to move it and the tape starts ripping off. So yeah, a little stressful.
We pressed the window in place, put the internal framing where it needed to be, and started to screw it in. This is where we realized that we did not buy 3 uniform windows. I thought that we had purchased 3 windows that all had the same depth, the same thickness of the wall. It turned out that this larger window was different than the other 2 windows, and I guess we didn't realize when we were making that purchase, but it wasn't too dramatic of a change, so it wasn't a big deal. We just kind of took the furring strips off that we had around the window and replaced it with a thinner piece of ply. So it was all good. It was an easy fix, but I guess that's just something to be aware of when you're purchasing your windows. Make sure that they're all the same depth, that they're all rated for the same wall thickness. And after that, we were good to go. We started screwing that frame in, and we very quickly realized that the screws they send with these windows are trash. They are such absolute trash. So we started replacing some of the screws, and once we did that, everything went in so much smoother. So I guess that's one of the things that we learned in this process is maybe just grab a pack of better screws before you do this install because you might need them. Once all the screws were in, we had replaced some of them with better screws. They all sucked that window onto the outside of the vehicle, pushed the internal framing against the furring strips. You can just tell when it seats into place. You can feel it, but also you can go onto the outside of the vehicle and look on the frame. You should see some of the butyl tape kind of squeezing out of the edges. That's how you know it's pressed really well in place.
Yeah, really good to check that, particularly on the top outside, because that's going to be the worst spot. If that's leaking, you have the most problem. So go around and feel it, and you'll see if there's still a big gap, and you might have to adjust something either with the screw or the furring strip.
Finally, that big window on the driver's side was completely installed. After a lot of learning curves and frustration, we felt really good about it. It was seated in place. It was really tight on the outside of the vehicle, and it was time to move on to the other 2 windows.
Yeah, now we just got to put the order board up and we can start selling tacos out that side.
We basically repeated this exact same process with the other 2 windows. They were just a little bit smaller, but we did the same thing with the butyl tape, pressing it in place and screwing that internal framing in.
I can say the smaller windows are definitely easier. You know, the shuttle bus had such huge windows, and we had a couple of the thinner ones, and you could really tell the difference. It's just a lot less stress. It's a lot easier with the smaller ones for sure.
Can't help feeling like time is passing through you. Do getting smaller. Surround yourself with friends just to walk away, feeling smothered. Climb in bed and hide underneath your covers. Wonder why your life keeps getting smaller and smaller. Just know I'm with you, babe. Just know I'm with you. Caught up in a flood, it's never slowing, always growing. Caught up in a flood, it's never slowing, always growing. Is it time we get going?
And with that, we had 3 brand new windows installed in the vehicle. This was really exciting. This was a cool moment.
Yeah, it looks so much different and both sides look really cool. And with the door and the 2 windows, it looks like, yeah, it's starting to take shape. It's really exciting.
Next up was the last piece of this puzzle, and that is the Tern Overland Wildlands door. We showed this in the episode where we cut all the holes in the vehicle, and you guys seem to love this door just as much as we do. It is really cool. We talked about all its really fun features in that episode.
Yeah, really excited about this. I will say they did a lot better of doing their spec sheet correctly. And the door was actually to the spec they said it was.
Oh, it was spot on. It was spot on. The first thing we had to do for this door was weld in the threshold. We never did that when we finished the framing. So we had to make sure that was in there to support the bottom of the door. Wasn't too hard to do. We just cut a piece of tubing and welded it right in.
You do have to make sure this is exact because I had to go back and grind the weld just a little bit because the corner would catch. So you do have to get the measurements spot on. But they're, like I said, their specs are perfect. So it is correct what they're telling you right out of the box.
This door is pretty crazy. It is essentially held in with glue. There's only 4 screws in the whole thing, and that's mostly just to keep it in place while the glue dries. For this install, all we had to do was follow their directions. They send a super detailed directions packet with the door, and essentially it involves lining the door up with these tiny little spacers all around the outside to make sure there's room for the glue. You make sure that it sets in place properly, that it's straight, and you screw it in place just with 4 screws. Now you remove the door, you put the glue all around the outside of it, and this is a Bostik adhesive. We've never used this before, but it is a very intense adhesive. You put a bead of that all around the outside of the door, press it back in place without those spacers, put the screws back in, and just let it dry. You have to make sure the door opens and closes, that it doesn't bind anywhere, but we had really good luck with that. It went in pretty seamlessly. We didn't have any binding or catching, so all we really had to do was get it in place and make sure it was lined up and just let it dry.
Yeah, and those set screws are just holding it there so the glue has the gap and it has time to dry. They're really not gonna do much. That's not the point. They're just holding it in place, but If we thought the butyl tape installation was stressful, this was so stressful, and I knew it was going to be like super critical once you get that adhesive on there and the door just fits, and it's heavy and it's high and it's really difficult to hold and not put your fingers in the adhesive.
It was a stressful moment when you put the adhesive all around the edge and you pick it up. You have to press that stuff in place almost perfectly, and it is pretty heavy, and I was inside trying to line it up. Drew's the only one lifting it. But I think compared to the windows and other things that we've installed on the vehicle, just using adhesive and 4 screws to get this door in was pretty cool. We also taped off all around the edges of the door and on the door itself so that once it's in place, you can pull that tape off and it gives you a really clean line. We then let the adhesive dry for a few days. We just didn't touch it, didn't drive the vehicle, wanted to make sure that there wasn't any vibration moving that until the adhesive was completely 100% dry. After everything was dry and completely set in place, I went around the edges and taped off all of the windows and the door. This is so I could seal the edges of everything with Geocell ProFlex. This is just a sealant that we like to use on the outside of our windows on the shuttle buses. So we figured it was a good preventative measure for these windows as well. Now the door didn't need it, but we wanted the door to match the windows. So we went around the outside of the door too, just to give it that same black line that the windows have. And we think the door looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it looks really good with that.
So now the windows are sealed from the outside around the edges with this ProFlex as well. We've had really good luck with this sealant on the buses. And as we mentioned, we just don't trust these windows. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that they don't leak.
Yeah, once those were all in, like, we really love how it looks. The door just seems to match the shape of the vehicle. It just fits. It looks really good on there. It's
the same color as the body of the Unicell, which is really crazy because they're not matched up in any way. We just bought the door hoping it would match. It matches perfectly. It's even the same kind of sheen as the gel coat. It looks like it's made for that vehicle.
After a few days of everything being completely set and dry, it was time to back it out of the tent and do a water test. So we got the hose out and just started spraying, make sure there's no leaking.
We absolutely doused this thing in water. It would be like hurricane level rains, but that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to give it a really intense test to see how it would perform if we were in really heavy rains. So we absolutely drenched the Unicell in water with the garden hose, just sprayed right at the tops of the windows and the doors. We were also testing out all of the mounting points for the roof rack and the vent fans that we installed last week. We just wanted to make sure everything was set before we start building in the vehicle. So I stood inside of the box and Drew stood outside with the hose. The roof, 100% good. No leaking at all from any of the feet of the roof rack. The vent fans were so good. No problems at all. The 2 windows on the kitchen side, also perfect. Really, really good. Then I looked at the Tern overland door and I saw some water coming through in between the outside door and the screen door. It wasn't coming in on any of the edges or framing. It was just that water was coming in between those 2 doors. The thing is that we don't have the door 100% installed. There are 3 brackets that go on the inside wall where the 3 deadbolts connect and lock into. So I did reach out to Tern Overland and they got right back to me and they said that these 3 brackets on the inside of the wall are likely what needs to be installed for the door to completely seal itself against the vehicle, and that's why we were seeing that tiny bit of water coming through.
At this point, the gasket on the door itself was just not being compressed hard enough because where the deadbolt and the door clicks into, once you close it, it's not locked down yet, so it has some give. As soon as that's locked down, we're confident it will not give and it will pull the door in a little tighter and it should be good. And that was our thought, and when they got back to us, they had said the same thing. So we'll update you on that, but we are definitely confident that's not going to be an issue.
Once we get our final door framing in, that's when we're going to install those brackets. So I'm confident that it will be good after that.
Then we got to the really big window, and we are dousing this thing. The way the glass is set in itself, there was some little bit of water must be getting in, because on the sill on the inside you could see a little bit of water, and you went around, it wasn't on the walls, it wasn't coming in at the hole we cut and any of that. The glass, how it's set in the frame itself, it's letting a tiny bit of water in.
I felt all around the edges of the window, and the actual hole itself seemed to be sealed. The butyl tape was in place. There wasn't any water coming in around the edges. It was coming in on the glass, on the inside glass of the window. So we kind of think that the seal around the glass of the actual window might not be completely in place, and we're gonna have to do something about that. We're gonna have to seal around the glass or something. I don't know, because it was pooling inside of the frame itself. I don't know, I've never really seen it do that before.
We don't recommend these windows. Yeah, that should not be happening.
We're gonna have to chase that problem around for a while and do some more testing on that window. We're gonna get to the bottom of it. I would say the water test overall was a success, even though we had a little bit of kind of mist coming through that screen door. We know the solution to that. Tern Overland is confident in the solution to that. The 2 kitchen windows, all good. The whole roof, 100% good. It's just that big taco truck window.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any suggestions on how to seal up that big window on the driver's side, let us know in the comment section. We are open to suggestions. We've already done the butyl tape. We've already done the ProFlex. I mean, what more could we do to the outside of that window? One last tiny job this week was to actually install the plywood walls that we coated with Kills last week. Now, we just made rough cuts on this plywood for the windows because this was the ply that came with the vehicle. It was already on the walls. It's really thin. It's like 3/8, maybe a little bit less. So we decided that we wanted to save some money in ply and just use what we already had. So the first step was to actually make our final cuts. Now that the windows were installed, we could put them back up against the windows and measure the exact size of the window frame and cut around the edges of it.
Since the walls were finally being locked down, I had to secure the water lines that go to the shower. While I'm trying to keep most of this stuff exposed, like under the bed, behind in cabinets, there is the one spot I have to get behind the shower wall itself and then up to put to the shower head. So I had to get those done ahead of time, otherwise we'd just be pulling those walls off again. And we've already done that a few times, just sizing them up, and I don't want to do it anymore. So that's in, the lines are ready, they're just sticking out of the wall, ready to be connected when we get to that step in the process.
The shower is now completely ready for the 2 side walls and the shower pan, so that'll be coming up soon. We got all of the other plywood walls secured in place. It's all coated in Kills, and it looks like a blank canvas in there, just ready for all the furniture and walls and fixtures. But as time went by this week, we kind of decided that some of that plywood is dead weight, and we're really trying to save weight in this build. We're not going too crazy with that, but we do like to cut out just unnecessary weight, and we think that some of that plywood is going to be unnecessary, like behind the kitchen cabinet. There doesn't need to be plywood back there. You're never going to see it. It's not really doing much but sitting there and adding weight. So we think that maybe in the coming weeks we will cut some of it out and then leave the parts that'll be exposed, because we have quite a few exposed walls in this build, like above the bed, by the couch, underneath the cabinets, around the door. So we do need that ply, but some of it you're never gonna see, and it's really serving no purpose. So I guess we'll keep you updated in the coming weeks, and you'll be able to see if we cut some of that ply out. That does it for episode 6 of the Unicell build series. Everything is really starting to take shape, and it has that blank canvas kind of vibe to it at the end of this week. The windows are in, the door is in, and those plywood walls, the plywood floor, the ceiling, it's just ready to build in.
Yeah, the outside is already transformed so much. It looks like a completely different vehicle, and I'm excited to see the progression of that and where it finally ends up, but it already looks really good. We're excited, and we're just gonna keep this thing moving.
Thank you guys for being here with us. Thanks for following along, and we will see you next week.
Later.